for today's Q&A. Fingers crossed that the tech goes okay with this. We're still new to using the software that we're using, and as many of you may have noticed, some of the other videos when they recorded had a little bit of a lag time before you were able to actually listen to the video. So it's kind of started a few moments into the presentation. And let me check one thing. Okay, so I'm hoping you can all hear me. I'm starting just a little bit early, but it looks like maybe it is noon now. So I am Dr. Lynn Stiff, and I'm so grateful for all of you who have enrolled and participated in this challenge that we've created through Banner Health. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a totally free program that was created in part through a grant by the Well Trust, and then also with the support of North Colorado Family Medicine, which is the family medicine residency in Greeley, and then also the ECHO Wellness Program, which is employee wellness through Banner. And so most of you watching this at this moment in time are Banner employees, but we hope that you will share and spread the word about this program because it's free to everyone. And the 8-week video series will continue to be available on YouTube. And our hope is that patients and friends alike will be able to get some of the benefits that you all have mentioned in your feedback that you've given us thus far. So all of this material is extremely relevant to basically everyone. It's pretty generalized in the sense that it's not individualized for a specific disease state, but we hope that after you've listened to the videos, you've seen how it can be applied to your life regardless of any health conditions you may have. And then my hope is that you'll bring some of this information back to your doctor and talk to them about how this has benefited you and helped you, had more fulfillment in life and more energy and just overall kind of a new spark for motivation to keep moving forward. So this is the final installment of our current video series, which was called Lifestyle Medicine 101. And this was the 8-week series that went through the different pillars of lifestyle medicine and served as an introduction to what lifestyle medicine is and how you can use it to harness the health in your life. And we're hoping, especially based on the feedback we've had so far, that we'll be able to continue some educational endeavors through this YouTube channel to help continue to support everyone in their desire to live a healthier, happier life. And then there will be some updates probably here and there of programming that we're trying to put together in the community. Again, our residency program is located in Greeley, Colorado, and we'll hopefully have some group-based patient programs that will be starting in the January timeframe. So still a work in progress, but we're really excited to offer that. And that will be something that would be available to anyone who's interested. The first program will probably just be with our residency patients as a pilot, and then we hope to expand it and have it be open to anyone in the community who is interested in participating in a group-based program that involves a dietitian, counselor, physician, or nurse practitioner who specialize in lifestyle. Oh, something's going on. Okay, sorry, I think I may have lost you for a second there. But I just was saying I want to emphasize that you really are not alone, because the feedback we've gotten from this program over and over again is thank you so much. This has been super motivating and empowering. I have found information in all of the talks that has given me something to work towards. And that fact that each person is reflecting on these topics similarly tells us that this is something many people want to do in order to take charge of their health, and that there are a lot of you out there who are passionate about not just relying on medications, but being able to harness the power of your body to work towards a healthier lifestyle. So that's really exciting, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with some way to connect you all. And I apologize, I'm at home right now, as most people are, and my kids are on the other side of that door. So you may hear some other noises, but I'm hoping that my little setup here will drown those out. So this is technically live, and over here I'm not sure how it looks on your screen, but on mine I have a little chat here. So I believe there's a spot where you can type questions. So feel free to leave a question if you have one. Otherwise, I'm going to go through some questions that were submitted to us. Before I get started, just a reminder that if you're doing this for the Virgin Pulse points, which are part of the Banner Employee Wellness Program, you need to have watched your videos and submitted the survey for the survey saying that you've completed this with your evaluation of the various videos, you need to complete that by the 28th. The 28th of October, because by the 31st of October, you need your certificate. And so we need to have a little bit of time for turnaround. And so just submit that survey as soon as possible. I am kind of bulk processing them to Echo Wellness. And so the next one will be Friday, and then Monday and Wednesday. So if you submit yours on Friday afternoon, it might not get processed until Monday, but keep an eye out and we will send it to the email address that your banner email address. So please leave that in the survey. And I'll try to remember to post the link. Let me see if I can post it for you real quick, actually. Sorry, give me 1 second. So I'm going to put this in the chat, which I assume on your end you'll be able to see. So that should pop up in a second here. So without any further time, I will get to these various questions. So there are a number of them, and I'm hoping to get through them in a reasonable time period. And I tried to group them based on the lecture. So the first one was the Stress Less, Live More lecture. And the question was, how do you know when it's time to seek help, like see a counselor or a coach or a psychologist with stress or emotional self-care? Because this is something a lot of people feel like, well, I should just be able to get over this on my own. It's not a big traumatic event that has happened once before, in my childhood that I'm dealing with. This is more of me just feeling stressed or stuck right now. And so the answer is that anytime you're feeling stuck in patterns, and you feel like you can't get to the next step, like you're trying really hard and that you have been implementing these tools, but you're not getting to where you feel like you should be, that's a reasonable time to bring in a professional who can give you some insight. Because sometimes when we're in our bubble and those in our bubble with us may not be able to help, because we all are sort of living the same life experience. And it can be challenging for us to look outside of that experience for what might be going wrong or holding us back. And so if you feel stuck at some point and you think that things could be better than they are, and you've tried on your own, then that's about the time you should consider speaking with someone. And right now with COVID, there are counselors are very busy, but there are also numerous resources through employee programs. And so be sure to check out employee assistant programs, because oftentimes, I know Banner's employee assistant program does this, you can call and speak to someone immediately. So I know someone who was struggling with severe depression earlier in COVID, and to the point that they couldn't get out of bed and they were very overwhelmed. And they could just call in those moments because they had other responsibilities. They couldn't just lay in bed all day. So they called and they got some support to kind of get them through until they could see a counselor virtually, but have regular sessions. So make sure that you advocate for yourself and try to find an opportunity for that. And feel free to reach out to employee assistance program if you are kind of stuck and not sure what they offer. The next question was, I rush through 4, 7, 8 breaths. And so how am I supposed to slow down, right? The point of this is to be relaxed, but I find myself rushing. So what you want to do is try to count slowly. And one way is to do the good old 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi that we learned for a long time. And remember that it can sort of be anxiety provoking when you hear you have to hold your breath for 7 seconds and breathe out for 8, because you think, well, gosh, I only was able to breathe in for 4. Well, I feel like I'm, drowning or suffocating. And I would encourage you to do what you can. So maybe you start off and you can only do 4, 6, 6 breaths. Start with that and then go to 4, 7, 7 breaths, and then 4, 7, 8. And it will take time. But if you practice it every day, 1 or 2 times a day, you'll start to notice how you are feeling less anxious about that kind of holding your breath sensation, and you'll be able to complete it much easier. And then the third question for the Stress Less, Live More is, how do I know if I'm in chronic stress? So you may feel like you're overwhelmed. You might be able to or not be able to sit still or settle. You could feel any of the effects that were discussed in Bethany's talk on that chart that she offered, and also in that handout. And you might notice that certain things are continually triggering you. So even when it's not a stressful situation, you find that so let's say crowds have become overwhelming. Maybe something stressful has happened in crowds before. And now you find that every time you're in a crowd, even if you felt good going into it, just being in that crowd suddenly just makes you feel uncomfortable. And you realize now that you're more in tune with your body that that uncomfortable feeling is the stress and anxiety. So you may want to consider that, or that would be something to consider as being in chronic stress. And you can notice sometimes that you'll actually develop other symptoms. You might notice you get nausea now every time you go in those crowds, or your stomach gets really upset. And that could be because of this constant feeling of fight or flight in those situations. And we remember that stress, our body, our brain doesn't know the difference between a tiger chasing us or us feeling overwhelmed being in a crowded room. And so our body's instincts react the same way. So you get this surge of stress hormones that cause you to feel this anxious feeling, and you can have a lot of side effects from that. And you might notice you can't calm down in between as well as you used to be able to. So that would be something to consider as being in chronic stress. All right. And I have not received any additional questions for that one, but very gracious with their time and support. And so if you didn't get a chance to leave a question, just leave this in the comments, or leave one in the comments and we'll get back to you. All right, the next talk with questions is the nutrition talk. So we had a couple of questions. The first one was a concern over how do I know I'm getting enough protein if I decide to follow a plant-based diet? And so a lot of people feel like the only sources of protein are animal products. And beans, especially beans and nuts, have a lot of protein in them. And in general, they have sufficient amounts of protein to give you the amount you would need in your diet. Many people have believed that a lot of protein means that you'll be healthier. And just like anything else, excess is not necessarily better. And so there's actually few people who need extra protein. And so in general, when I was a dietitian before medical school, I rarely saw patients who needed extra protein unless, they were elderly or had some sort of medical condition that they had to limit their diet in a way that did cut out all protein or many protein sources. But many plant-based items have protein in them, and it's very easy to get enough. And if you want just a ballpark of how much protein you need in a day, you can take your weight and divide it by 2. And that's about the max protein that you needed the max protein you need in a day in grams. And so if you weighed 150 pounds, you need roughly 75 grams of protein at the most. So less, like 60, would likely be sufficient. And so obviously you should speak with a healthcare provider if you want a more specialized recommendation. But most people, that's sufficient, even if you are someone who exercises a lot, because that is on the higher end of estimation. And excess protein actually is associated with some health conditions because protein is not the cleanest product to burn. If you were to eat carbohydrates, that gets burned right into energy. It's very easy for our bodies to use. But protein, it gets burned into some carbohydrate that your body uses for energy, or some glucose. And then, it also turns into amino acids and byproducts that need to be processed. And those need to be processed either by the liver or the kidneys. And so this is why some people are actually advised to eat lower protein diets if they have certain health conditions. So if you do have health conditions and protein is a concern, I would recommend you see a dietitian to get more specifics on how much you should be eating to make sure your body has what it needs to get stronger, but then also isn't too much that it could cause harm. All right. And then, so this is the biggest barrier to eating really just more vegetables in general. I continually hear people concerned about the cost of eating a healthy diet, whether that is just increasing the plant content or going completely to a whole food plant-based diet. And really, it doesn't have to be expensive, but it takes some planning and research. So if you buy specialized products that are plant-based, those will cost more than if you just eat the whole food. So if you were to buy some specialized meat product, or meat substitute product like the Impossible Burger, that's going to cost a lot more than if you were going to use your Instapot or Crock-Pot or good old fashioned boiling and make some beans yourself and use them for a meal. So it's important that you first try to get rid of this belief that it's expensive and or cost prohibitive to be eating a plant-based diet, because if that's your belief, then as you approach this, we all have biases. So as you approach this, every time you realize something's more expensive, your body will register that, oh yeah, see, it's too expensive to eat this way. It's cheaper to eat just kind of the standard American diet. Now, second question is about, how hard is this? So can I do this on limited time? Because we're all busy, right? And again, if you plan ahead, this doesn't have to be very time consuming. One of my favorite plant-based meals is if you make kind of a bowl and you have your grain and bean and various vegetables and some sort of sauce and maybe some nuts or seeds, and you just mix it all together. So these are super popular and people eat these all the time. They might put chicken or something in it, but let's say you're wanting to go completely plant-based and you don't put that in there. That itself, you could prepare all that on a Sunday in an hour-ish, and you could portion it out for the entire week and have a delicious plant-based lunch in very minimal time. But the key is meal prep and doing things in advance. So it can be really challenging and daunting if you've not done this before. So start small. I wouldn't recommend, if you eat the standard American diet, to jump all the way to plant-based immediately. Instead, I'd recommend that you choose one meal a day and do a little research and find some easy to follow recipes that you think you could do and just see how that goes. And there are lots of, I could talk for hours about meal planning. So we don't have time to go over that here, but I do think that's something that I'd love to do more talks on. But really just taking even the 15 minutes on a weekend to write out what you think you want for your meal throughout the week can make sure you have ingredients on hand and allow you to do a little prep in advance. So you're just throwing things together. And I'm going to put this in the comments. There is a 30-minute meal. Let's see here. So a 30-minute vegan, so plant-based meal list on the side. And then the third question wasn't really a question, it was more of a comment, but it was that do I really need to be vegan? Like, is that really necessary? And various people within the lifestyle medicine group will take different approaches to this and have different opinions. My personal belief, from what I've read in the data, is that a Mediterranean diet is very close to as healthy as a plant-based diet. The studies that are often cited with the plant-based diet are around cardiovascular health. And I would agree that the Ornish diet there's a study that shows it reverses plaque and it's as effective as stenting your heart. So getting stents placed in for someone who might have a heart attack. So it's extremely effective. It's just extremely hard to follow if you're not used to eating that way. And so I don't want to discourage anyone from considering to be plant-based. And I also don't want to discourage anyone from considering to be a Mediterranean diet. I would want everyone to look at their diet and say, how many real foods am I eating? Whole foods, mainly plants. How many of those am I eating? Even if they're not plants, yogurt's minimally processed if you just get plain yogurt. So how many foods am I eating that, my grandparents could recognize? And then reflect where you could maybe improve and do one step at a time. This isn't an overnight improvement. This is a transformation that will happen over months and years for some people. So you just start slow and you see what works for you and what doesn't. No one diet is perfect for anyone. That's why no one can decide. And there's a new fad diet, every 3 months. And so you need to find what works for you. What could you eat? What way could you eat forever? And what way is sustainable time-wise and financially? Because some diets can be more costly if you aren't able to find foods you like that, are low cost. Like I was talking about beans, dry beans are like 79 cents a pound. So again, one step at a time. You don't need to go completely plant-based. Just look at your diet and see if there's one place that you can improve upon. And Michael Pollan, his statement, if I can remember it correctly, is eat real food, mostly plants and not too much. If you can do that, that would be amazing and you will be healthier for it. So that simple rule is this, does this look real? And trying to eat more plants is going to be very beneficial. So we'll do more talks on all of this. There is a question on the side here. So carbohydrates at night. So this is an interesting thing. So for many people will process foods differently, and that's largely due to your gut flora. And so I could probably talk forever about gut flora too. It's very fascinating. But some people, if they eat a lot of raw vegetables, they will have bloating and diarrhea or constipation. They'll just feel sick. And it's not comfortable. It doesn't make you want to eat more vegetables. Where other people can eat raw vegetables without problems. Same with carbohydrates. Some people can tolerate gluten without any difficulty. Other people might notice that if they do eat carbohydrates or gluten-containing items, that they just don't feel well. And so this is what I mean about being individualized. So there's no science that says if you eat carbohydrates at night or any time of day, you will have bloating. But if you eat foods that don't sit well with you, you'll have bloating. Also, overeating. Carbohydrates are a very easy food to overeat because you might not realize that you're getting full. And so you might end up eating, because a serving might only be, say it was potato chips. Let's say, and potato chips are plant-based. So again, we all know it's not just about following a specific diet. It's about using common sense. So potato chips, not the healthiest food to choose. But a serving of potato chips is, 8 or 10 chips probably. It's not very much. But who eats 8 or 10 chips? Not many people. And so it's easy for you to eat more than you need. And then that can lead to bloating as well. So I think the beneficial thing is to listen to your body. Some people do great if they don't eat after 6 p.m. Other people can't go to bed hungry, and they do better if they just listen to their body and eat when they're hungry, stop when they're full. Other people can't eat carbohydrates at night. Some people can eat carbohydrates all the time. So again, there's not a quick fix or one answer for everyone. And anyone who tells you that there is lying. It's not. And so it might work for them or for a group of people they know, but there is not one universal diet that's the best for everyone. And so I would encourage you to, listen to medical professionals who are saying that this is individualized and we need to find what works best for you. And are protein supplements harmful? I think protein supplements in general are a waste of money because most Americans get enough protein from their diet or they can get enough protein from their diet. And it is harmful if you consume too much protein, so too many grams of protein. So like I talked about earlier, figuring out how many grams you need in a day. And most people should be able to achieve that in just a regular diet, even without eating, a granola bar that has added protein. Just in a regular diet throughout the day, if you're consuming enough calories, you should get enough protein. So you can save your money and then you can buy some more plants with it. So, because that is also an interesting thing. Sometimes we think we need to buy these expensive products. And so that further instills this idea that in order for us to be healthy, we need to spend a lot of money. And while the default would be not eating well and not spending a lot of money, if we just kind of did what society put at us as the tastiest, or as, they advertise as the tastiest, cheapest thing, that doesn't mean it's going to be healthy for us. And so we do need to be proactive and think about what's best for us. But it is possible to eat a healthy diet without needing expensive supplements. All right. Before I belabor nutrition any longer, I will go on to the next one. So stress culture in you. So this one was just one question, and it's what can I do to stop my mind from racing? And so this is in the context, someone who feels like they're overwhelmed by stress. They find themselves turning to a glass of wine at night because that's what slows their mind. And so they're wondering, what can I do to make that not happen? Because I realize, which again, this is the first step, is acknowledging that this process is happening. So I realize that when I am stressed, my mind races and I routinely go to wine to make it stop. So you acknowledging that thought process is huge. And then you're going to look backwards. Okay, so I'm using a glass of wine to stop my mind from racing. How about I do something else? And you come up with another idea and you try it, but your mind is still racing. You're still overwhelmed. So there's this great tool called a container theory. I have used this personally. I know many people who have used it. It's wonderful. So it takes a moment. You should probably, for the first few times you try it, you should go somewhere where you can sit quietly and not be disturbed so you can practice it. Because, at least for me, imagery was really challenging because my mind is always going, and it can be really hard to stop that and focus just on an image. And so what you want to do is close your eyes and think of a container. And any container works. It just needs something that can have a lid on it. So think of a container, and then what you can do is always use. So what you want to do is a container that is pleasing to you in some way, and you'll probably always think of the same container. And so what you want to do is think of that thought. That's all the thoughts going through your mind, physically being placed into the container. So you could, in your mind, imagine whatever you. It could be you. It could be a dog. It could be anything. Taking that thought and physically putting it in the container. Then once you feel you have put every thought in that container that you have, put a lid on the container. The container's still there. And sometimes if the container's clear, it can be helpful because it's kind of like you see it in your mind. Because the reason why you're thinking these things is your mind is worried you're going to forget one of these items, and it doesn't want you to. It wants you to address it because this is something that's bothering you in some way or something you must do. And so knowing it's still there, you're acknowledging that it's a thought you're having and that you'll come back to it later. And so what you can do then, once you've done this, I recommend practicing this, daily for at least a week. So you kind of have a container and you can visually do this more easily. Then when you're at a meeting at work and you're feeling overwhelmed, you can kind of mentally do this at the meeting by putting some of these other things that you don't need to address at that meeting, right? You're just listening to the meeting and engaging as possible. You don't need to be thinking about how you have to take the dog to the vet and your kid needs a flu shot and all these things are happening. So what you can do at that moment is think about those going in the container, knowing they're still there, you will address them, and then moving forward. And then when you have 5 minutes free, you can sit and drop into your body, visually open the container, pull these things out and begin addressing them. And once you've done that once in a while, once you've done this a few times, you start to realize, yes, this is not a threat. I'm going to address these things because you've showed yourself you are, and you see how much better you feel when you aren't constantly being reminded of them. So I would definitely recommend that you try doing this if you ever struggle with a racing mind, or just with thoughts that are persistent that don't go away. Maybe your mind doesn't race, but you think about something you did that you feel like you did wrong, every 10 minutes. You need to stop that process because you'll go crazy if you keep thinking that over and over again. So instead, if you can practice this, then that's a time where you're able to set it aside, and then you can really dissect what it was that happened at a moment where you can devote all your time to it. All right. The next talk was on compassion, and I apologize, these are out of order from the actual talks, but the next talk was a compassion talk. So there were 4 questions. The first is, will practicing compassion make it more likely that people will take advantage of me? So the basis of compassion is facing things head on with a realistic viewpoint. So you're still being a realist as you address this, but you're understanding that we are better able to understand what someone else is going through by giving them a benefit of the doubt and seeing their side of the story. It doesn't mean that we're just going to kind of sit back and say, you can keep walking all over me and doing these things that are harmful to me. What it means is that you're going to step back and think why this might be happening, maybe find a way to have some compassion for them, which would be an active choice, but then also honor how it makes you feel and come up with a response that feels like it's a healthy boundary or healthy balance. So I've never met someone who practices compassion that says that they wish that they didn't have some sort of compassionate, loving kindness type practice. I've met many people who wish that they were more connected with others and wish that they could relate to others more and feel somewhat alone in their day-to-day living. So I would encourage you to try it and just see how it feels. Let's see. Will I be too easy on myself if I practice compassion and then be unmotivated? So this is another thing is if you've grown up with this mindset, hard work and constantly driving, it can make you feel like you can't stop, that taking a break or giving yourself, acknowledging when you need a break, and giving yourself some compassion when something goes wrong, that means that you're going to fail. And so this is going to take time. I personally have struggled with this one a lot. So this is going to take time. But basically, what you need to do is address it slowly. So using self-compassion will help strengthen your ability to cope and build resilience, because it calls us to face our suffering head on as opposed to avoiding it. So once we know that we can try out something and potentially quote unquote fail, once we know that we don't have to be perfect at it and that we could fail at something and it's okay, we will find ourselves taking risks we never took before. You might apply to a job you never thought you could have gotten, and then later find yourself in that job because you took that chance. You also might not get the job, and you need to learn how to grow from that situation instead of beating ourselves up. And so practicing self-compassion will allow you to do just that. It will allow you to address a situation, give yourself grace that it didn't go the way you had hoped, and then find a way to learn from this. So this is similar to a growth mindset, which thankfully is being taught in many school curriculums now too, to teach kids you don't need to be perfect. The biggest thing is that you learn from the experience you had. And so because many of us, this happens a lot actually, is many of us feel like we've tried so many times to do something and we always fail. So we just become critical and say, I just can't do it. I hear this all the time about these healthy lifestyle changes, especially eating a healthy diet. And so when you're critical of yourself, you say you can't do it, it's not for me, then it can leave you feeling unmotivated and you feel poorly. You wish you could do it and you think you can't. And so taking more self-compassion towards yourself, acknowledging that maybe that was a really hard phase of life when you tried that, and you know more now, and you've learned some cooking skills and meal planning skills. Maybe now you'll be able to, change your diet. And maybe now you've realized smaller changes are more sustainable than big, huge changes like dramatic diet shifts, or, taking on a whole new way of eating. And that learning process is in part through self-compassion, and continuing to see how you're able to grow in a situation. And then number 3, isn't it selfish to be so positive with yourself through self-compassion? So the more positive or compassionate we are with ourselves, the more capable we are of being positive and compassionate with others. And then we're able to connect with others significantly deeper level. If we honor and support our struggles, it helps us have capacity to see that others are struggling as well. And we can relate to them in a way that if we are kind of being rigid and closed off, that we may not have been able to, that we may not have been able to relate to them. Compassion is also the practice of acknowledging that we're all connected through pain and suffering. My pain and suffering is unlikely to be identical to yours, but the way I'm feeling it, the angst that I have from pain and suffering is likely similar to your angst. So while what caused us this pain isn't the same, we all experience pain and suffering, and being able to acknowledge that and connect to others through feeling and compassion is very powerful. And then the last question was, I thought it wasn't healthy to take on someone else's pain. Wouldn't a healthier version be to empathize and support? So I would agree that it would be unhealthy for you to completely take on someone else's pain. And that would be like sympathizing with someone where you're physically feeling their pain. Instead, we do want to empathize and support. And I apologize if that came through unclear in the video. But what you need to do in order to empathize is you need to experience a glimpse of what that pain could feel like. So if somebody has a loss of their parent, we don't want you to take on all of that pain and suffering that they have, because that won't help anyone. Brene Brown has a great example of this, where some person's stuck in a hole. Sympathy is that you're down in that hole with them. So you're like, I'm here with you fighting through. Well, how are you going to get out of the hole? You're both stuck in a hole now. That's not going to help anyone. But instead, you say, I see you, I want to help you, and you find a way to connect with them to help get them out of that hole. So you think, what would it feel like to be in that hole? You experience for a moment what that pain would be. And if you're someone like me, I have I have a problem with empathy. I have a lot of empathy. So like my daughter stubs her toe and I feel a tingle in my whole body. Like I feel that she's having pain. Sure, I'm not stubbing my toe, but I get every time someone has pain, which can be challenging as a doctor to have this sensation, but I feel physical discomfort or a physical sensation when somebody experiences pain. And so it's not meant for you to take on all of their pain. It's meant for you to acknowledge they felt pain. I have felt pain. I know what that's like. I know how sad and lonely that is. And I want to help them. And so the connection that you feel is not being right there with them in the sense like, I'm feeling the same pain as you. Because if someone came to you and said, I know exactly how you feel, you would probably get defensive and say, no, you don't. You didn't just lose your mom. But if you said, I am so sorry for your loss, I can only imagine how sad and lonely and hard this must be right now. And I want to be here for you. I know what it's like to feel pain, and I can only begin to imagine what you're experiencing, but I want to help you through this. And just not offering advice, just being and sitting in it with them is the key. So hopefully that helps clarify that a little bit. And I would recommend, and here, I guess maybe I have a second, I can quick put it in the chat, because this is like a very famous TED Talk YouTube. Let's see. So I'm not watching this before, but I think this is the right video. So you can take a look at that. It's just basically, it's a different one than I've seen before. She does have a TED Talk, but there's a great video about sympathy versus empathy. I guess I should have put what that was up there. Sorry. I'll put it in here again so that you know what I'm telling you to click on. But so definitely check that out. And if you Google Brene Brown, sympathy versus empathy, it looks like there's a kid version too. So that would probably be great to watch if you are a parent. All right, sleep. So how can I use the principles that you've described when I'm a night shifter? So the unfortunate response is that working night shifts or swing shifts are harmful for your health. No matter what way you cut it, people who work non-traditional shifts have lower lifespans. It's just unfortunately the way it is, and it's because it's hard on your body. Some people have to work night shifts. I personally have been working a lot this year. And so if you're working night shifts, you obviously want to try to be as healthy as possible to facilitate that so that you're able to make sure that you are so you're able to switch back and forth in the healthiest way possible, because being someone who's a night shifter, you're going to have these a tendency towards poor health outcomes. So how can you mitigate those as much as possible? So one is having a regular schedule. So come up with what works for you. So how do you transition to nights and transition off? Making sure that when you're calculating your how much you're sleeping, that it's actually getting to 7 to 9 hours a night. So maybe you're somebody who can't sleep, like I can't sleep more than 3 or 4 hours during the day, but only 3 hours of sleep is not enough for a night shift. So sometimes I take 2 naps. I'll sleep in the morning, see my family for a few hours, and sleep again in the afternoon. Figure out what works for you. But I would encourage you to try really hard to get that 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night so that you're able to make sure your body's getting the rejuvenation that it needs. And ideally, they would be in long enough stretches where you'd be getting into some really deep sleep and some REM sleep. Prioritize sleep. So this can be hard. Again, many people work night shift because they have young children and they're trying to avoid the cost of daycare. So you need to sleep though. So trying to figure out how you can schedule your day so you're getting sleep when you need it. So sleep comes first, not even though you want to play with your kids one afternoon at a park. Make sure that you're that you're prioritizing sleep at the top of your list, because if you're not well rested, likely you won't be able to show up for your kids or those you care about as well as you could if you were rested. And so making sure you take care of yourself is really important. Melatonin can be helpful. It's not harmful. There's also valerian root and chamomile and a couple other herbal supplements you can try. Again, the evidence is mixed. I think this goes back to the personalization. If I know some people who swear by melatonin. So what they do is it's like an hour before they're supposed to go to bed for their night shift, they take their melatonin. And when they're switching back to days, they take their melatonin preemptively to try to trick their body into knowing what to do with the sleep cycle. It may not work for you, so don't waste your money if it doesn't, but it's generally benign. You can talk to your doctor if there's any contraindications to using any of the herbal sleep supplements. Diet, exercise, stress management, and meditation. These are things, again, that have been talked about for everyone. They're even more important if you are someone who's a night shifter, because how many of us, 2 a.m, we're tired and we're hungry just because we're so tired. We crave carbohydrates when we're tired because they give us instant energy. And so watch your diet. Make sure that you're bringing healthy food from home so that you have a healthy snack to eat at night, as opposed to having to, opt for something that you can find in a vending machine because you're hungry and you can't stay awake, but you physically feel hungry. So try to have healthy options that you feel happy that you're eating. Exercise. So it can be really hard if you work night shift to make sure you're getting appropriate exercise, and figure out how that can work for you. But I would encourage you to find 30 minutes somewhere to make sure you're exercising, even if it's just walking in the halls at the hospital if you are a hospital employee. So on your break, go for a stroll down some halls that aren't very busy and just get some extra steps in. Just the sustained amount, because many people are walking all the time on their night shift, but that's different than the sustained exercise, because when you're walking here and there, that's great for keeping your body moving and active, but it's actually the sustained action of exercise, so continuous walking at a hard pace, that gives you some of those benefits of fitness and also the stress management benefits. So speaking of stress management, making sure you are managing your stress. Because again, sometimes if you're on night shift, if you are sleep deprived, you might not realize that why you're snapping at everyone, or you're irritable, or you feel very emotional. And so instead of pushing it off and saying it's just my sleep schedule or it's just how it is, address what it is, because you could be very happy on night shift if you want to be, but it might take some extra effort on your part to figure out what it is that's triggering you. And then guided meditation can be super helpful if you have a racing mind. So trying to make sure that, let's say you can't fall asleep because your mind's going crazy. Try the container that we mentioned. And then you can also try listening to a guided meditation that will just slow your mind down. And you can even, if you have your phone on silent, just play this guided meditation and it'll turn off, and hopefully you'll just fall asleep. You don't even have to look at your phone again. Another comment or question, I guess it's a comment and a question, is I use my phone for my alarm. Is it really a big deal to keep it in my room? So an alarm clock costs like $10. And so if you're having trouble sleeping or having rested sleep, then yes, it is a problem, because there's something about it being there, and you might check it occasionally and not really acknowledge it, or just have this anxiety that you're going to miss something. But if you're not sleeping well, I would recommend taking it out of your room. If you sleep fine, don't worry about it. I sleep fine. I have my phone in my room as an alarm. But if I was struggling with sleep in some capacity, that would be the first thing that would leave, and I would just get a standard alarm clock. And then the third one was that I use podcasts to fall asleep, or similar examples would be I have the TV on when I fall asleep. I listen to music to fall asleep. Is that okay? So this is not the sleep specialist response, because I didn't get a chance to get her this. But in general, I would recommend evaluate your sleep when you wake up. I personally do not think you should have any noise besides maybe some white noise to help you go to bed. And I think sometimes we use these things to quiet our mind. So our minds are so busy that if we were to sit in silence, they would go crazy. And so people will use things like TV or podcasts to drown that noise out, so they can just focus kind of on what the person's saying, but really just numb and make it silent. And so if you're the latter, then I don't think it's okay for you to be using podcasts to fall asleep, because you're still having some sort of unrest in your mind, and you're just putting a Band-Aid on it. The more important thing would be to address the racing mind. But you won't know until you take a look at all of this. So if you wake up in the morning well rested, you don't need more than maybe 1 cup of coffee for your day, you don't find yourself getting sleepy in the afternoon, then you're probably sleeping well at night. But if you're having daytime sleepiness, if you wake up multiple times at night, if you have a racing mind when you wake up, then I would not be doing this to sleep. And I would recommend addressing the underlying problem, because this is going to help you overall. If you have that fast of a racing mind, there's a chance that there's just a low-lying chronic stress that's happening, and that's going to impact your overall health and just how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. So addressing that may be uncomfortable at the moment, like in that moment, but the long-term benefit is so significant. And you can just imagine how lovely it would be to be able to just sleep uninterrupted. So if you have any other questions about sleep, especially night shifters, because I know we have a number of those here in Banner, make sure you leave those questions in the bottom, because I would love to get you more support and help with kind of that flipping back and forth. All right. Oh, sorry, that was really loud. Last one, physical activity. I'm going to try to get this in under my hour time frame as my goal. So the first one was that I don't have a gym membership. How can I stay active? So there is exercise everywhere, and the best, hands down, best form of exercise for every person is to walk. Just go outside and walk. It uses your whole body, especially if you're really walking fast and using your upper body. You're out in nature, which is amazing for your health. There are many studies that have looked at being in nature and positivity, mental health benefits, stress management. And so you don't need a gym membership for that. You can just go outside. And if you're one of our Colorado Banner employees listening to this, we live in an amazing area. I don't know the other areas around Banner as well to speak to their trail systems and walking systems. But, being outside is amazing for your health. And if you have the luxury of sidewalks or trails, I would recommend you take advantage of those. So that would be the first. Some people don't like walking in the cold. I'd recommend some warm hats and gloves. And if you're really working fast, you're going to warm up and it'll be fine. But not everyone is okay with being out in the cold or in the dark. So the malls are a great option as well. Or like I said before, walking the halls at the hospital or, even in your clinic, depending on its size and location. But trying to schedule time in so that you can walk is huge. If you're able to run, that's great. You get it done faster, but it's not about, I think if you're trying to focus on this, you want to try to make sure you're doing at least 30 minutes. And so for someone who's running, you might be able to get an extra mile in your 30 minutes than somebody who is walking. But if you're increasing your heart rate with sustained exercise for 30 minutes, regardless of what you do, it's still a great health benefit. Other ideas, rollerblading, cross-country skiing, biking, anything, again, that's outside if you can. I know Peloton is expensive and isn't feasible for many people. If it's something that you've considered, they have no interest payments for their Peloton bikes right now. So it's basically like a gym membership for a few years. And the overall cost of the bike and the subscription service is less than a gym membership for many people. Fitness Blender is totally free. I love Fitness Blender. It's like a low frills online, any kind of exercise you could ever imagine. So you can go there. They have it sorted by difficulty level from 1 to 5, 5 being the hardest. You can search for strength training, band training, no weights, HIIT training, which is the high interval intensity training, full body or specific body locations. So definitely check that out. It's just fitnessblender.com. And again, it's totally free. And the couple is really fun. If you just Google on YouTube, whatever you want, if you want to do yoga, Pilates, you want to do HIIT, even CrossFit, just Google on YouTube and you can do those things at home and find a friend, because obviously more motivation and support is going to help. And I'm going to talk about that again, I think. Yeah, in this next one. So the next question was, I'm nervous about going to the gym during COVID, but I don't do well working out at home. So gyms are a legitimate concern for COVID. And I'm not trying to harp on any gyms, but it's just people are breathing heavy and sweating in a space with limitations on its air filtration system. I have not heard of any COVID outbreaks in gyms. And so they are likely, they're doing great things to try to stay safe. But it's one of those things that if you could avoid, that would be, it wouldn't be harmful to avoid. And again, it could save you some money, or you could divert that money elsewhere. But the trick is, I know this is me. If I'm working out at the gym, I'm always more sore the next day, even if I do the same thing. I just must push myself harder if I'm at the gym around other people or doing a class. And so how do you stay motivated at home? So the first thing is what motivates you. So figuring out why you're doing it and how you can have a carrot dangling in front of you to push you to commit and keep moving forward. This can be challenging, especially if you're new to exercise. You don't really know what's motivating you. You just know you should do it and that's it. So I think if you can figure out what motivates you and plan in advance to have goals where you, when you get to this place, you get to treat yourself to something or, try something new, that is awesome. If you're someone who's a little less self-motivated, then a friend is super helpful. Create a challenge. Find someone. They don't even have to be doing the same fitness activity as you, but make goals for yourselves and keep each other accountable. So maybe every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you text your friend and ask what they did. And every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, they text you and ask you what you did. And you do this together. And then when you're feeling like you don't want to go do anything, text them and say, I don't really want to work out today. And they'll come up with something to motivate you. Maybe they can come to your house and walk with you, or maybe you guys could do a Zoom workout together or something. And so if you have someone in it with you, you're more likely to be successful. Starting easy. So you don't need to be able to do the level 5 hit videos on Fitness Blender right away. So start with like low hanging fruit, because when you reach a goal, you're more likely to continue forward momentum. If you're trying to walk up a mountain and you haven't been walking, it's going to be so much harder and less enjoyable. You'll hate every minute of it. But if you start walking 1 mile and then 2 and 3, and then you start adding hills and different terrain, you'll realize that it actually is really enjoyable and you're satisfied when you kind of push yourself a little bit to the limit and you get to that point of your goal. So start easy and work up in a reasonable fashion. If you are just getting started and you want to run a half marathon, please do not schedule one before May 2021. Okay, so it takes time to build up enough stamina and endurance to sustain that kind of exercise, even if the online plan tells you you can do it in 12 weeks. If you want to enjoy it, take your time and enjoy the process to get there. And then the last part of this is making sure that you schedule this in. So I'm a morning workout person because I know that if I don't work out, if I work out in the morning, then I'm more likely to be able to stick to my plan. If I don't work out before 7 a.m., then I'm not working out. I'll try to fit it in and I might be able to add it somewhere, but I have 3 young children and work full time and I'm doing a fellowship and there's just too much happening in life right now. So life will happen. I might feel guilty if I break away to work out, or it'll be 7 at night and I'm exhausted and I'm not really interested in working out anymore. So for me, I have to do it in the morning if I'm going to do it. You might be the opposite. You might be really motivated right after work. So that's when you do it. But think about what works for you and then schedule it into your day. Don't have it be a non-negotiable. You wouldn't cut out of work just because you don't want to go, right? Like make this a thing that you're doing no matter what. It is part of your well-being. And unless obviously you're sick or some extraneous circumstance comes up, you're going to commit to it, just like what you would do for work. All right. And then I think I have a few minutes. So the last question was, I'm confused about fitness versus weight. I've always assumed that I can't be healthy until I've lost the weight that I need to lose. Can you explain this? So I could go on a soapbox for this. So I'm going to try to not overdo this for you. But we've been conditioned to believe that you can tell how healthy someone is by looking at them on the outside. And unfortunately, it's not true. So it could correlate, sure. Lots of things could correlate. But as we have all been made very well aware, especially in this last year, outside appearances do not dictate anything on the inside. And it's very harmful to perpetuate this belief that you need a certain body type in order for you to be healthy. So instead, I would encourage you to start thinking of it this way. Health starts with behaviors, and you have the power to be as healthy as you'd like. You can't change the past. You can't change eating habits in the past, exercise habits, stress in the past. Any of the things that you have done previously are there. They've happened and that's the past. The beauty is it doesn't have to still be that way. And the trouble though is that these past experiences can lead to anxiety about various things, and in disbelief, especially like I mentioned before with the fixed mindset. You could think that I've tried this before, it's not going to work. But that was you then, not you now, who knows so much more and sees how much more potential you have to leading a healthy lifestyle. So, one area that's very anxiety provoking for many people is that you think you have anxiety going to the gym, that everyone's going to be looking at you and judging you, and that you can't go until you've lost weight. But the whole point of going to the gym is to go be healthier. And if you don't have another way that you are motivated to go be healthier, how will you be healthier? And so, most of the time, people are at the gym not worrying about anyone else around them. But we still have in our minds that they're judging us. And so, this can be a hard thing to work through. And I would encourage a counselor or a coach or someone to help you work through that if this is the mindset struggle you're having. But you have to know that today you have the choice to choose how your health looks. So today you can choose to go for a 15-minute walk outside, regardless of the past, regardless of how you look, regardless of everything. You can choose to go for a 15-minute walk. And so I would encourage you to think about all of these past beliefs around weight and put them in a backpack. I love this analogy about backpacks. So you put them in this backpack that you're carrying. What if you just take that backpack off and set it aside for a little bit? What if you say, I'm not getting rid of the backpack? Because a lot of these beliefs we have instilled in us as things that we have to follow to be healthy. And so what if we just take that backpack off and set it down and say, I'm neutral about my weight. My weight doesn't matter. This has nothing to do about my weight. I am focused on being healthy because I want to play with my grandkids. I want to be able to run with them at the park, and right now I can't. And I don't, and they ask me questions about why I'm not playing with them, and I can see how their heart's breaking and mine's breaking too because I want to be with them. And so instead, we take this backpack off. We say weight doesn't matter right now. What matters are health behaviors that are going to lead to a healthier lifestyle and allow me to do the things I want to do in life. And so consider this alternative approach. And, is there really harm in this? Okay. Some people will say, oh, well, you're saying it's okay to lead an unhealthy life. And that's not it at all. What we're saying is that your size is your size. There are many factors that influence it, from genetics to previous health choices to medical conditions. It doesn't need to define who you are as a person, and it doesn't need to define your health, how your health looks in the future. You can participate in any health behavior you want, and it's a matter of focusing on the behavior, not as the behavior as a means to get the weight off. So if you take that backpack off and set it aside, you can then focus on doing the behavior for the benefits of the behavior and not worrying about losing 3 pounds or 20 pounds, but instead walking every day and eating a healthy diet and managing your stress so that when you go play with your grandkids, you can play tag at the park and you can be present and you can be happy, regardless of what your body looks like on the outside. And so I think that's a large focus of what Dr. Cindy Dallow was trying to get across in her message, that it's more about fitness than your weight. And I would encourage you, again, to think of this as an analogy with a backpack, that you can put those rules back on if you decide that's what you want. But just consider for a moment how freeing it would be to take that backpack off, how light you would feel to just be who you are in this moment and have the decision for how the rest of your life can look. So I'll get off my soapbox. I'm just under 60 minutes. Thank you so much for participating in this program. We are so floored with how much support we've gotten through this program. Thank you to all of the speakers who have helped out. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the response at the bottom of this video. That should be live soon, I hope. And we hope to be seeing you soon. Take care.